The mission today is to sharpen your swords and get you ready for battle. It's time to fine-tune your craft and make you the best in what you do. The mission is to equip you to help anyone purchase what they need. We'll share the best advice from the best in their industry. You'll be listening to a conversation you wish you had with the mentors you wish you had. Take what makes sense to you and makes you better in your career. You guys, Bruce Lee said it best. Absorb what is useful and discard what is not.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Commission Mission. My name is Eric Gervais.
And I'm Micah Henderson, and today we have a good friend of mine, Mike Calidonna. He is a native of New York, came down to Florida with the military many years ago, but he's been teaching faith-based financial planning courses for years. 20 years?
That's right, just about 25 now.
About 25 years, and he has a wealth of knowledge, pun intended, wealth of knowledge that he's going to be sharing with us that a lot of these universal principles that we talk about apply across different industries, but when it comes to sales, when it comes to face-to-face sales, when it comes to living that commission life, these universal principles all apply. Mike, thanks for coming.
Sure, no sweat. Great. Thanks for having me here. It's a good time.
Something that I got from you that really made sense to specifically the financial services industry, but I think it applies across the board, is the reasons why people don't make it in this industry. Can you share that?
Well, so my experience, right? So I've been doing this for a bit now, and my experience ends up to be that there's really three commonalities why people don't make it in the long term. What we do for a living, really, if you get good at it, it's going to be self-fulfilling. It's going to be, that it's pushing a kid in a swing. Eventually, you don't have to go pretty hard. But, the first little bit is hard. So what I've found is that, first off, if you don't have the financial wherewithal to really survive that first little bit, right? The first couple of years are going to be hard, no matter what. If you're out there and you have to make a commission to make a mortgage payment.
But no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure, right? And you may sacrifice some of who you are to make that commission just because you have to. You're stuck doing it, right? So that's kind of the first reason why people fail. They don't have the financial wherewithal to kind of go forward and do that. The second reason really is they have too many familial obligations. And I don't mean that in a bad way, right? But sometimes there are things that we do, we kind of sell ourselves to the industry for the first little bit of time, right? So you're kind of stuck. If somebody says, hey, I want to meet at 5 o'clock, and you're like, well, I have to pick up the kids at 4:30, and that's consistent. Obviously, that happens every once in a while, right? But if it's a consistent thing and you're stuck and you don't have that ability with flexibility with your time because of other obligations, familiar or otherwise, right? And then the third thing, and there's two parts of this, right? The first part is if you have somebody who doesn't really believe in you, right? So that could be a spouse, it could be a significant other, it could be a friend who says, what are you doing? That's ridiculous. Why are you doing that? Doesn't make sense, right? And you come home and you think that sometimes. You think like, what am I doing? This is stupid. Why am I doing this? And if you have that person who's agreeing with you, then it's hard, right? And the other part is if you don't have somebody to kind of egg you on, right? To kind of push you out the door.
The flip side of that coin.
Yeah, to give you that reason to go out and do it. That really, what you're selling or who you're doing, or if you're driving for commissions or whatever those things are, if all of those things line up, you can financially afford it, you can emotionally afford it, and you have that support system in place, I think you're set up for great success.
Yeah. You're coming from a place of power.
That's right.
As I said, I love the analogy of the swing because my partner and I, we use this very similar thing is plant a garden.
Right.
So you pick the right seeds and you plant those, but when you first put those in the ground, you don't see any results. You just got to faithfully water those things and expect that if you're planting the right seeds, it will grow the fruit that you want to produce.
That's exactly right. Same thing.
I always heard specifically the plant bamboo. I guess it's notorious for growing underground for a long time before it really comes above ground. And when it does, it's hard to stop it. And that's my experience. Once you get that ball rolling and people, you get your name out there and everything. So having that support system, especially financially, going back to the first reason why people don't make it, that if you don't have a steady flow of people, which it's hard to when you first get started, those few appointments or prospects that you have become more and more important, and you act differently, you act more desperately, even if it's just a little bit. And I think people are perceptive, and I've heard it called commission breath, and people kind of hear that whether you work completely independently or whether you work with a company that you have somebody to answer to, a boss to answer to, the most pressure that I've ever gotten were from my own bills and my providing for my family. That this Monday morning report is not nearly as much pressure as that empty refrigerator.
Right.
So in preparation to going out on a commission-based career, saving up, getting a good emergency fund.
Well, so honestly, it's like anything else in the world, right? If you anybody can wander their way into chaos, right? You can wander your way and just not know what you're doing and just.
I do that on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's right. You wander your way into chaos, but you often don't wander your way into success. It's very few people really just wander and wake up on third base and say, how'd I get here? It just doesn't happen, right? So if your intent is to go, now clearly there's one-offs, right? So there's somebody who gets fired from a job and they have to do something. Now you're stuck, right? But if you're going into it with tactical purposes, right? You're going to sit down and you're going to say, what do I need to survive? You're going to do the budget, right? Talk about a budget, whatever that, you can call it whatever you want, a spend plan, but that's what it is. It's a budget. How much money are we spending for food, shelter, clothing, basic allowances? Okay, that's the first thing. In the first beginning part, you're not going into a restaurant unless you work there, right? That's kind of the idea, right? You're sacrificing. You're sacrificing now, so you don't have to sacrifice later. Well, if you have, generally speaking, so you mentioned that I was in the military for 20 years. I did active duty military. I had a very common, very consistent paycheck. Our emergency fund for our family needed to only be, maybe 3 months of what it costs us to be us, because I knew I was going to get a paycheck the 1st and the 15th. You get a paycheck. Commissions, we don't know that, right? We can expect what it is, and certainly the longer you're in it, the more reliance you have on exactly that. But the first little bit assumes zero, so you want to have like a 6-month emergency fund in place, 9 months if you're maybe in the real estate market or something like that, where it's really ebbs and flows. It's everything or nothing. An emergency fund will give that, and that'll also give your partner or whoever else you're kind of going through it with. That'll give them the confidence that it's not a big deal.
So that the third reason why people fail might be able to help that a little bit more. If you say, "Hey, honey, I've planned for this. It's going to be slow at first.
Absolutely.
Don't freak out."
Right. Absolutely. And that's just it. Having that conversation beforehand. If the first time you have that conversation is when there's no milk in the fridge and no money in the bank.
That third reason is going to be a big one.
You've wandered your way into chaos.
Yeah.
And one of the things that my experience with that was I actually had a full-time job and didn't want to be in construction working 70 hours a week for $20-25 an hour. There wasn't a lot of room for growth in there. It was very finite, and I was breaking my body. I was killing me, and I was doing it for my family, which at that point I had no time or energy to spend with them. And so what was really interesting with my partner, how we did it, it's kind of like working part-time on your fortune while you do your job. And so I started committing an hour or two a night, and putting things in place, getting leads generated and things like that until I did my first deal. And then once I did my first deal, I saw that I had other deals in the kitty, and then it made sense for me to leave my job. So sometimes you don't have to go all or nothing.
That's right.
To be successful.
That's what I was saying, that at the one-offs, there's one-offs where you're stuck and you have to do it. You get fired, your job terminates, whatever.
Yep.
But a lot of people do exactly what you're saying. They kind of, think about somebody writing a book. If you have a book written in you, you're not going to quit your job and go write a book. You're going to take some time and write a book in the evening.
When I was finishing college and starting in the financial services industry and had a kid, I was working in a restaurant, and I went from the kitchen to the front of the house, and the time I had dedicated to the financial services industry was only a few, but I knew I had to be really efficient with my time. But slowly but surely, I had less and less time for the restaurant, more and more time with the financial services, until I was trying to get a shift a month to get out of the house, break the monotony, grab a beer with the fellas after work, on the way home. But you just really have to be dedicated. One saying that I wanted to share with you guys, and it's probably a proverb or something, but the man on the mountain didn't land there.
I wrote that.
Yeah, that was you. I knew it was you.
So this is my how I think about it. The man on the mountain, He had to climb there, but before he climbed there, he had to plan.
Right.
He had to make sure he had the right equipment and he knew the path before he got to the top of the mountain.
And the other side of that, right? So let's say you're in a family industry or something like that, and you take over the business from your father or mother or whatever. If you wake up on third base and you take credit for that triple, people are going to hate you, right? If he's like, well, look at how I got here, right? Your mommy gave it to you, right? They'll give it to you. So that's same thing, right? You either have to work very hard or be born very lucky.
Yeah, well, and most likely get to work. So talking about getting to work, your time in the military, has that shaped the way you think that helps you in helping people learn about their personal finances, or were you always kind of analytical in that way?
Great question. So there's a couple sides to that story, right? So the very first part, I joined the military when I was 17. I was clueless about everything. It was the easier decision, right? I had to make one decision. Let me join the military. Yeah. And over time, I was successful in my military career. I became a commissioned officer and got a couple degrees and that kind of stuff. But over time, you kind of realize, first off, as looking back, I realized I was working for a not-for-profit organization. The military is specifically designed to be non-profitable. So it's weird in the management thing, you get paid for who you are. You get paid for being, I was a weatherman in the Air Force. So I got paid for being an Air Force officer and being a weatherman by design. Okay, so that's good. So that gave you kind of that personal motivation to do those things. It was never about chasing a buck because it wouldn't matter.
Right.
So it was always about that personal motivation. So when, and because of that, I was horrible with money, right? So we'll just be honest. We're all friends here, and whoever's watching this thing.
We're all friends.
We're all friends. So, after I was married once, and after that marriage ended, when I met my wife now, we came from money from two very different viewpoints. We just did. I was a single dad, had a bunch of kids, that kind of stuff. So I was just spending money. What do I care? Right? I was spending money I didn't have to impress people I didn't know. That's really the truth. And whatever, it was fun. And I could outwork stupid, right? Sometimes men can outwork stupid. You make stupid decisions, you can outwork it, right? So when I got married, we kind of had to unscramble that. Second marriages fail for a couple reasons, right? And some of them are very personal, but one of them is finance, right? So if you're not on the same page with finances, then you're just not on the same page. So prior to me getting out of the military, we started this church faith-based financial planning stuff. And we did that. We got on the same page, and we kind of unscrambled our finances, and that worked fine. Well, then I got out of the military. Then I retired. I did 20 years in, and Mama said, we're not moving no more. So then I got into the commission-based kind of process, and we had that emergency fund in place and all those types of things. But I never lost, I think back to your question, I never lost that personal integrity that I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this because I want to be relevant. Money's not my motivator. If you know what your motivator is, you can, tweak that. My motivator is to be relevant to other people.
Wow.
I like that about integrity. You mentioned something about integrity because I've found the more true to myself I am, the more successful I am.
Absolutely. Yeah.
In what I do.
Money will follow if it'll happen.
When you're talking about unscrambling your 2 points of finances that you and your wife had, we were just talking with somebody else about where you learned finances from, and that creates your point of view where you start off, and how a lot of times you learn that from your parents, and you can be learning the same good and bad habits from those parents from what you actually want to be. Would you say that was your upbringing to give you your personal planning perspective?
Well, it feels like I'm putting too much blame on my parents.
No, I mean, it could be a teacher.
It was one of those things. So I grew up, I'm a little bit older than you guys, right? So in the time where I grew up, I'm the youngest of 8 children. We didn't really talk about money. It wasn't something that my family ever brought up. There was always enough of it.
Yeah.
And it was magic. But my father certainly instilled a great work ethic.
Yeah.
So we all had jobs starting, very, very young in life. I think I was 10 years old washing dishes at the Silver Moon. It was awesome. For $2 an hour. It was great. No, they probably did, but Tony Licari wasn't a U.S. citizen, so it didn't matter. But so you get instilled with that work ethic, right? And then, the reality ends up to be that spending money's fun, right? So at the end of my second marriage, or my first marriage, the second marriage is still going on. Let's be clear about that for right now. I hope so, hey, honey. But at the end of the first marriage, you ended up, you combat unhappiness with spending money. Oh, if we only had this boat. Oh, if we only had this, let's go on that one vacation. That kind of stuff. So you end up, making chaotic decisions. Then as a single dad, listen, I understand it. As a single person kind of raising kids, you just want to go to McDonald's and get a Happy Meal, right? I mean, that's just what it is. So you don't care about money at that point in time. So you can wander your way into chaos. I wandered my way into chaos. Yeah. But, I had a big shovel and not that big of a hole.
There you go. Those couple of things help. So work ethic, right? You had the same work ethic, taught very young, and that led you through to where you are now, happy, right? Certain aspects of what people are doing in their job, whether they're working independently or working for a company, that is what they need to work on, and work ethic is a huge one. We would really like to help people here, all our viewers and listeners, achieve their goals, be successful at whatever they do. That if you have an abundance mindset, there's enough business out there for anybody. There's a LIMRA statistic talking about how many people have never been approached let's take the subject of life insurance. And so that's a huge untapped market. There's plenty to go around. I think that applies to any area of sales. Right? There's plenty to go around. So we're trying to get people better at what they do. When it comes to work ethic, do you see anybody starting in our industry that doesn't have it? That is there a way to combat that once they're an adult and they already don't have the great work ethic? Because if you follow the steps of activity, there's enough out there. You're going to find it, and you're going to be successful. I mean, is there? Have you ever helped anybody in this industry combat a bad work ethic?
So the two aspects of that, right? The very first one is the best part about our job is that nobody's looking over our shoulder. Yeah, nobody's looking over our shoulder. It doesn't matter if I don't show up at work on Tuesday. I don't have a boss that's calling me saying, "Where are you?" Right. That's one of the reasons I like my job. Yeah. I have my own personal, work schedule and all that stuff. Worst part about it is nobody's looking over my shoulder, right? So if I don't show up on work on Tuesday, nobody cares, right?
But you're losing out on potential.
Yeah, but that's down the road. Yeah, right? That's a death by a thousand cuts kind of idea. That doesn't happen until next month. Yeah,
or the following month when you realize.
Yeah. If your pipeline's dry, it's because you didn't do anything 4 months ago. Right. And the other side of that, by the way, it's also hard for me to unplug and take vacation. Same idea. We just took 2 weeks. We went to Italy. We had a great time, but it was difficult to unplug, kind of knowing that quickly, what have you done for me lately kind of shows up. So you put in a little bit more work before. Your question was, can you change that? Can you, sometimes you can't fix stupid. Some people are just not designed to be left on their own. They
need the 9 to 5.
It's just, that's fine. And there's plenty of 9 to 5 jobs that they could go do. Sometimes people take these jobs thinking they're so easy because they look at somebody who's successful in what we're doing. And they look at your lifestyle and they say, I want that lifestyle. They don't see the hard work. I didn't wake up here, right? Same thing you were asking about, the work, the children, how what you learned from your parents. Well, think about it. Your kids are, my kids, your kids are a little bit younger, but my kids' generation kind of want to move into the house that my wife and I currently live in. Well, we didn't start there at 20. We want the lifestyle that they had. And guess what? It's easy enough to get credit for it. It's easy enough to get all that stuff for it. So if you don't have that internal drive, Mike, I think it's hard to somebody else to teach that to you.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question about that because so you've set a goal, you start working towards that goal, and an obstacle, a challenge shows up. A lot of times, if it's a big challenge or a big obstacle, people quit. That's like, so what did you do in your career over the time to handle obstacles and challenges that showed up to get through those? Was there anything specific?
Or a specific story?
That's a great question. I remember when my father-in-law passed away, just very early into doing what I was doing, my father-in-law passed away. And it was kind of, an emotional time, my wife's dad and all that stuff. And we went out to go visit and to kind of settle his estate. And I remember sitting across from the other guy who does the job that I do, and I was thinking, that guy's an idiot. This guy, And the obstacle for me was like, do I come across like that to people? That was my obstacle. So because what do you know? How long does it take to do what we do? It takes, you go take a test. And, so if you're good at test taking, you can really go take the test today and go do it. So my obstacle was more internal. I wanted to make sure that when I was giving people advice, it wasn't just off the cuff, right? So what I did to combat that is I got my CFP, my Certified Financial Planning Certificate, right? So the company I work for doesn't really encourage that the first couple of years, so I just paid for it on my own. So I found the way that met, and it did a couple things for me. It met that sort of personal internal goal of that I need to have more knowledge about what I'm doing to give appropriate advice so I can be relevant. And it filled the time gap, right? Because sometimes there's some time gap. If that pipeline's not so full, you're kind of looking around, what do I do here? What am I supposed to do? And nobody's looking over your shoulder saying, you got to go do stuff. So I haven't had really big obstacles like that. I mean, there's been some things just emotional along the way. When people say no, right? That's a little bit stressful. Mm-hmm. It just is. They say not to take it personal, but I took the yeses very personal. Hey, they like me. I'm great. So how can you not take the no's personal? And when you get a number of those in a row, you're thinking like, why can't I just go work at Home Depot? Why or whatever? Why can't I just go do something else? Right.
So for me, one of the things that I found was establishing my why.
Okay.
Like, why am I doing this? And what really helped was, like, I don't know if you've ever done the 7 levels deep question, where if I were to say, why are you in financial services? And you would give me your answer. And then I would say, why that answer? And we go down to 7 levels. If you do this, usually by the 7th level, you could pretty much bring yourself to tears with your answer on why you're doing it. And what I've found is by establishing that strong why, that level 10 why, it doesn't matter what level obstacle shows up in front of me. If it's a level 2, a level 4, a level 5, it's a speed bump now. Where if I had a level 2 why, because it'd be cool, I just want to make some money, or I want a nice house. That's not a very passionate or strong why. And when your obstacles, challenges show up that are a little bit greater than your why, you stop.
Well, right. It's the same thing with like commitment to your spouse or to your significant other, right? I mean, if you make that commitment, then when the other pretty girl shows up, it's not that's the why. It doesn't matter, right? That's irrelevant. I made that other commitment.
Awesome.
And we have 4-year-olds, so I had a 4-year-old. We get the why game. Right?
Why? 100 levels deep.
Taking away your nuggets.
Yeah.
Look like you're thinking there, Micah. What are you thinking about?
We're getting all philosophical now.
Okay, that's good. That's a good way to be.
That is good. Just framing the questions to somebody that a lot of times I'm picturing somebody just starting off, and all the obstacles that I came across, and be the source of information that I needed at that time. I know. Starting off, it's always popular in the financial services industry to start off with your warm market, natural market, your family and friends.
Sure.
Make a list to bug the crap out of them, guilt them into buying something from you. Besides that, how did you start filling your calendar up with people not that you didn't previously know?
Right. So and that's a good point, because I really knew nobody. Being in the military, I wasn't really a part of the community or nothing like that. A kind of part of the community, but once removed anyway. And I found that the first little bit was, especially with what we do, we don't sell widgets. We just don't sell widgets. We sell dreams. We sell hopes, dreams, and aspirations, right? And everybody needs it, but everybody thinks they have something else. So I found that the single best thing you can do is show up next time. So you're here. I'm here at the chamber event, or I'm here at a business after hours, or whatever, some sort of social event. And you kind of chat with them about it, and then you show up at the next one, and oh, you were there last time, and oh, you're there next time, and so quickly they realize, first off, you have to eventually tell people what you do. You can't just whatever. You can't.
Well, the best thing is to ask them what they do, and then of course the natural next question.
Right. And usually what I end up doing is, when people like Micah, I don't really care about you. I do, but I'm just kidding. but like for people that I meet for the first time, I usually find out what they do very quickly. What keeps you busy during the day, kind of idea. And then I'll say, well, what'd you do before that? Because everybody has a before story.
Yeah.
That before story is often very interesting.
More interesting than what you're doing now.
Usually it is, right?
I'd also like to point out first job after college, large company, AIG, and I got the local manager to get a chamber membership. The first chamber event, the first person that I met walking through that first door was this guy. Hey, that same guy, a little less gray, handed me a card and came off very genuine. But then he was like, "Hey, I got a bunch of other people to meet. Nice to meet you. Give me a call."
Hopefully I followed up or I did something.
Well, it turned into this.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm not sure that's good or bad for me, but whatever.
You followed up hundreds of times in many different ways. But what you're saying is to be involved in the community, seen in public. People become more trusting and comfortable with you to talk to you about their lives, their needs, their hopes, their dreams.
You're asking them really personal questions. You just are. You're not talking to them about, hey, buy this boat or whatever that next thing is, right? You're asking them about, really, let me dive into your most personal thing, right? You don't talk to other people about money and sex. You just don't. And sometimes our job is directly. I don't know why you're smirking at that.
Because I do sometimes.
It's a little creepy.
It's I mean, maybe not you, but
but in our industry, if you don't do that pretty quickly.
Did you say money for sex? Or but right.
Money for sex.
Yes, money and just becoming comfortable with them.
Right.
I've had somebody mention that to me. And I was actually waiting tables. And it was a table full of really successful people, and they said they did what I was just starting to do. And I was like, number one advice, he said, be amongst people. Be amongst the people.
All the time. Don't eat lunch alone.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, eating lunch, that is a valuable tool all in itself, that I heard that there's a deeper reasoning behind it, a subconscious you evolved eating around the people that you care about. Yep. And so when you break bread with somebody, there is an emotional connection there that you're unlocking.
Absolutely.
That it's unsaid and maybe unknown, but it's there.
Yeah.
And see, I was raised in the Dale Carnegie sales, way back when, and it was like so in a box how you talk to people, you cushioned objections, and what I love now is the switch to relationship building.
Absolutely.
And getting, because I can get people like me all day long. I might not be able to remember the cushion and the response to this particular objection, but I know I could be friends with people. And so I think by understanding that sales is now a relationship building process, it actually makes it a lot more attainable and a lot easier for people to be successful in that.
Right. And at first you're trying, anybody with a heartbeat you kind of want as a client, right? But eventually you kind of winnow out, I'm going to see your name on my phone, and I'm going to be like, it's Micah again. Right. And so I don't want those people, right? And they don't want me. I don't understand why people.
I don't like chasing somebody, bugging you and pestering you. Please don't do that to me. So the last thing I really wanted to talk to you about that is so crucial in our industry, especially to succeed, is referrals, and how you felt about going after them, asking for them, what some of your language that you use, and what percentage of your business now is based off of them.
So now it's 100%. Yeah. Now it's just people that I know. I've been doing it a long time. And really what I'll end up doing is, so I'll talk to you, let's assume I'm helping you out, right? And I'll be like, hey, Micah, we have a great relationship over time. And you know that I've kind of delved into your hopes, dreams, and aspirations. And we're doing stuff to make sure that we're meeting your goals, your specific goals. Not everybody who does what I do does that. If you have people that you're talking to and they're talking about their, the guys who helping them out with their finances, and they don't have that same relationship, just introduce me to them. I'll do that stuff for the same people. I'm genuine.
That's really non-threatening, non-confrontational way of doing it. All great stuff, and I know you're going to be able to help a lot of new financial planners and financial services, and anybody coming in sales. This is going to really be relevant to them. So you're being relevant to a lot of people coming on here. We appreciate it. Is there anything that we haven't talked about thus far, or if there's you could plug something and maybe a nonprofit? I know you've.
No, I mean, you and I are involved both with the Optimists of the Beaches. So we do the Christmas parade every year, and that's a great event. And we raise money to help out childhood cancer, so families with childhood cancer to do those things. And scholarships. There's a lot of money inside of there that's going back to the community. That's very much helping people. I would contend that if anybody's getting into this, they do something on purpose that they don't get business from. Okay, so and that's going to be hard to do. So like when I first started, I did the Meals on Wheels thing. You know who never needs my help? Those people with Meals on Wheels. They don't need my financial help. They need somebody to knock on their door and say, "Hey, how are you?" and eat lunch with them, and just stop and just if we're not firing on all those on the 4 cylinders, right? The spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical.
We're laughing because our previous guest just mentioned the same thing, and it's
the same thing.
Okay,
and we didn't talk about this, but it's like a wheel with spokes,
right?
And if you have a spoke missing,
you're out of line, and it's not efficient, and you're not efficient. So that would be my my advice.
Okay, man. Really appreciate your time.
Sure.
Thanks for coming. Owe you lunch again. I promise.
What was the last part?
He says he owes you lunch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
I owe you lunch.
I guess he's putting it on a tab.
No, you know what he did one time? He says, "Hey, I'll buy you lunch," and then he
I really did though.
And he didn't have his wallet, right? So he tells me this. He tells me that he calls me up and he's telling me this, and we're meeting at a restaurant, and I was going to order some food and just leave, knowing that he was going to show up without his wallet. I didn't.
That would have been funny though.
That would have been hilarious.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Mike.
Thanks. Good meeting
Pleasure
you.
meeting you.
All right. I don't know where to begin to unpack this episode of the Commission Mission. Mike never disappoints. Came with a lot of stuff, and it's stuck with me before. That's why I brought it up again. The 3 main reasons why people don't succeed when it shouldn't be an obstacle because you should have planned ahead, and having that financial support because you plan for it up front, making sure you have the time available, and making sure you have that support structure when it comes to family and friends. You want the one side of the coin. You want people encouraging. And I feel like 10 people encouraging can be thwarted by one person discouraging, and that even if that discouragement didn't get you the first time, it keeps wearing on you and keeps wearing on you. If you don't have the mental fortitude to remind yourself your why, that person discouraging you could throw you off of your whole path of achieving your goals and living the commission-based life that is right for you, that helps you reach your dreams.
One of the things that kept coming to me as he was speaking was the old analogy of how do you eat an elephant? You do it one bite at a time. You can't just take on that whole elephant. And if you think about, oh God, I've got to eat this elephant, that could be a block and a stoppage in and of itself. So with small steps, one step at a time, having your reason, your big why to overcome obstacles as they show up. It was just phenomenal, and thank you so much for being here today, Mike.
Absolutely, and just being genuine. Anybody who gets started with me, I always hated the 100 list names of people, your family and friends that you had to do. So I never require that. I only think people that you feel comfortable talk to about this, but. That's a great point that he brought up, just being out in the community, being seen, people, being familiar, people getting comfortable with you, and anything that you do, so that you can start there.
One of my best deals and consistent deals came from a gentleman that I had met. We hadn't done any business together at this point, but he called me on Christmas Eve and said, "Can you come meet me?" And now I've got a family. I've got kids, that are expecting me. And I said, yeah, I can spend some time with you. And when I got there, I realized he really needed me there. And so we spent 8 hours at Applebee's on Christmas Eve. And when I got up to leave, he said, "Hold on, Eric." I said, "What's that?" He says, "I have 5 properties. Do you have contracts with you? I'll put them under contract with you." And it was all because I took my time, and he knew that I was spending Christmas Eve away from my family with him. But when you go out in service of people, the rewards come.
The kids' presents weren't wrapped under the present under the Christmas
I
tree.
have a wife, so they were. I wouldn't do it anyway.
But yeah, being genuine and coming from the right place in your heart goes a long way. So some of these universal facts that are going to help you wherever you're at in living that commission life. So that's this week's commission mission. I call it a mission accomplished.
Definitely. Thank you for tuning in, and be sure to check us out next week.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Commission Mission. It is our mission to increase your commission. If you got any gold nuggets out of the episode today, make sure you don't miss any more. Click, like, subscribe, whatever that action is for the platform that you're watching this on. Make sure you don't miss any more good nuggets, and help us help you.
Yeah, one of the things that new or struggling entrepreneurs struggle with is asking for the sale. Asking for what you need, and they're afraid of rejection. But I'll give you a sample of that exactly right now. Is if this helped you in any way, please share this with 3 friends of yours, 3 people that you think would benefit from what was discussed on these podcasts. And
friends in sales, anyone in your organization that can benefit from this needs to hear it. Thanks, everybody.